Hey there, I hope you're doing fine. In today's video, I will share to you the 5 scariest paranormal encounters in subreddit paranormal encounters. From the title itself, I hope it will give you a good scare. And before we start, I want to thank you for your continuous support in my small channel. It really means a lot to me as a small YouTuber, and still on the path of learning and developing. If I need something to improve, please tell me on the comment box below. I would greatly appreciate it. But if you are new here in the channel, please do not forget to subscribe if you like creepy and scary narrations. I upload 2 or 3 videos in a week. Without further ado, let's get started. This is the background of my story. I moved out of a haunted in-law unit last August. Light switches keep flipping up and down by themselves while I was home on many occasions. My bathroom door closed itself, and when I went inside, saw the toilet paper draped up and around my shelf. Another night, I opened my closet door and started dialing into my safe above, when half my wardrobe flies backwards right in front of me. Another time, I walk inside my bathroom, and at the very moment I step foot inside, the light turns off and on 3 times with long pauses in between. I just got the instant feeling like something was trying to get my attention and was frozen in fear. It got so bad that one day I just started yelling for it to leave me alone. The place was built 120 years ago with its own dedicated breaker box located inside. I ended up moving out and found myself a much newer, nicer in-law unit to live in. Before moving out, I lived here for 1 year, but the haunted stuff didn't really start happening until 11 months in. Oddly enough, I was close to renewing my lease. Thank God I didn't. Fast forward today. I moved out to my new place 5 months ago. For the first few months, I would get creeped out whenever I hear the noise or open a closet. Honestly, I feel like I have paranormal PTSD from all the experiences at my last place. Then, this last month, I started getting the vibe like something is watching me sleep and have felt that every night now. Then the other night, I went to bake cookies. I put the trays in the oven, closed the oven, and set the timer for 12 minutes. I then walked over to my computer, which is located in the same room. About 5 minutes later, the oven door opens and slams itself shut so hard. It was very loud. I instantly turn my head, walk over, and see the 2 trays of cookies inside at angles now because of the force. I'm positive I closed it, but I play around with the oven door for a bit to see if I can replicate what just happened anyway. Maybe it wasn't closed all the way. Maybe the tray was wedged between the door. Nothing. That oven is newer, and the oven door is heavy and stays shut with good force. It takes a good amount of energy to open it enough. To have it slam shut like that, it really creeps me out. Honestly, I'm not sure what to do at this point. Growing up with divorced parents, I've lived in 14 different homes and had paranormal experiences at a few of those homes too. So did my mom and siblings though, so I know it's not just me. Typically, I know that spirits tends to stay at the property they dwell at, but I'm worried that this last one may have followed me. I've read that it can happen if they get attached to you, and this last one really messed with me a lot. It didn't even matter what time of the day it was. Things would happen all the time. Although, I don't have any special paranormal abilities, but I am sensitive to them. I am very tuned in or aware of the paranormal. I did not sage this new place when I move in because I've heard that it can cause more damage than good. I also did not sprinkle salt around the perimeter like I should have. I'm not sure what to do at this point. Should I sage or is it too late? I haven't been sleeping much lately, staying up until past 3 a.m. because I'm just freaked out now and can't sleep. Did this thing follow me? Is this a different spirit? It's pretty hard for me to justify or dismiss this oven door event a few nights ago, but time will tell if I experience more things or undisputably paranormal. I want nothing more than to feel comfortable at my new place, and any help is appreciated. It's such an awful way when I'm spooked out all the time and can't sleep because of it. It's putting damper on my professional life. Thanks in advance. I still find it hard to stomach watching this film or listening to the lullaby song from the opening title sequence of Rosemary's Baby. A few years ago, I started watching Rosemary's Baby late at night. I was a night owl, so often would bing Netflix shows or films in the late hours of the night. This wasn't my first time watching Rosemary's Baby. It was only my second time watching it though. About halfway into this lullaby, that's in the title sequence, I heard 3 loud knocks on my bedroom window. I paused, waited a minute or two, and then unpaused the film. 3 knocks again. I assumed at that point that something was terribly wrong, so I left my room altogether and made my way to a different part of the house. I was in a different room that had window, and suddenly that window got 3 knocks on it as well. I run into another part of the house, which is the kitchen, which has a massive windows in there with sensor lights on the outside of it that often lights up if an animal or person walks by. And my kitchen window started knocking. 3 knocks, no sensor lights on. I grabbed a flashlight and started peering outside of all my windows with the flashlight, but didn't see anything or anyone, no person or animal. And it wasn't the sound of creaking. It was truly sounding like a person's hand knocking against my window. I remember that night that even going to the bathroom was a nightmare because there's a window in my bathroom and it would start knocking there as well. I have a wooden front door that has a large glass oval panel in it. So basically, I can see into the outside because my front door is half wood and half glass. I have sensor lights outside my front door as well. I remember looking into the night with my face up against the glass panel, hoping to see something. And whatever was knocking, it was knocking right back at me as I stood there watching for something or someone to appear. You would think that this was an isolated incident, except it wasn't. This nightmare continued for the next 2 weeks, and it always started during the night. At some point, I asked my father to come late at night and do an entire sweep of the house from the outside with a flashlight, and he never found anything. I asked several times and nothing or no one was ever found. After a few weeks of dealing with this every single night, it randomly decided to stop and go away. Whatever it was, it all started while I was watching the opening credits for Rosemary's Baby, and that's why I haven't watched the film since that incident. Nothing like this has happened ever since. Part of me wonders why it went on for several weeks. The other thing to note is that I often got terrified and invited people over late at night, since it was a continuous thing for several weeks. If someone else was in the room, then whoever and whatever was doing this wouldn't be knocking anymore. I remember inviting my dad over and he sat with me, but didn't hear a thing. I made him sit for half an hour with me, but the knocking had stopped during that point. I asked him to go outside and double check to make sure no one or nothing was there. And after he left the room and went outside, the knocking came back and started up again. It seemed to be a thing that was meant for me, and only me. If I asked someone else to come over because I was feeling scared, it would go quiet for a bit until that person left the room I was in and was out of hearing range. Part of me worried that I was going mad and hallucinating all of this, so I started using my phone to try to record some of these things, and I managed to get several recordings of the knocking. After a few weeks, it went away. It was ridiculously difficult to sleep though, while all you hear in your bedroom window is incessant knocking that ended up taking several weeks to just mysteriously go away. And as I said, it followed me all over the house. So, if I would be reading a book in my study, for example, that window would start having knocking on it. My bathroom has a window, as I said, so brushing my teeth or going to pee late at night was also a thing that felt unsettling to do. After a while, I did become somewhat jaded towards the whole thing and just accepted that some freaky stuff was going on. I became less afraid of it and more annoyed that it was bothering me. Eventually, whatever it was, just move on. I got reminded of this incident today because one of my friends had mentioned watching Rosemary's Baby for the first time, and it really took me back to those few weeks. I don't know if the film was in any way, shape, or form related to the incident that soon followed. However, given its content and nature, I wouldn't rule it out. I should preface this by saying I'm pagan or something like pagan. Also, I live alone with my 2 cats. This is a story and also looking for some advice on what to do if anyone has. Over the summer last year, my fan began turning itself off when I woke up. I sleep with my fan on because I like the cool air, and I turn it off when I wake up. The fan would turn itself off when my eyes fluttered open. It's not like I stared and I shook the fan. At first I thought it was a wiring problem, but the fan only turned itself when I woke up. Naps, overnight sleeping, it didn't matter. It's a newer fan too, so it's not like it's old. After a few months and feeling spooked, I burned some sage and the fan stopped turning itself off. That was my first evidence of something was coexisting with me. Immediately after that, things in my bathroom began falling on their own. The decor on my walls, shampoo bottles, all suddenly started to randomly fall throughout the day. That went on for a week before, and the sound startled me one night, and I saged the bathroom. Then it suddenly stopped. That's evidence number 2. Then the lights in my kitchen began to flicker between the hours of midnight and 3 a.m. I leave my kitchen lights on all day because it's a very dark room and I'm scared of the dark. The lights flickered for a few hours only during the night and only after I saged my bathroom. That's when I felt like I was living with a ghost or something. Every month since last July, the paranormal activity gradually became stronger. I have a giant cork board wall with hundreds of acrylic charms pinned in it. One day I came home and heard one of the charms had fallen. I checked and saw that my ghost Roomie had taken the tack out, let the charm fall, and put the tack back a couple inches to the right. When I passed through the doorways in my apartment, I felt like I was walking through something like a curtain. Like there was a presence chilling in my doorways. My cats would sometimes just stare at the doorways. The next month, I was woken by a man's voice leaning into my ear and whispering, "Hey." After that night, I began feeling a pressure on me when lying in my bed, like something was on top of me. Eventually, I consulted a mutual on Twitter who is a witch and deals with this sort of stuff. They did some poking around and told me that my ghost roomie is a man with a lot of mental trauma who is attached to the apartment and me. It lined up because he seemed to be messing with me but never my cats. I used to play with spirits in the astral plane when I was a stupid teenager, and at first I thought it was one of them, but I think he's a ghost that lodged into me from somewhere. Not too sure if he's always been here and he's been dormant for years, or if all the negative energy I amazed during the beginning of the pandemic drew him to me. Either way, he's very active now, that was clear. In December, I came home from work and saw my cat run under my bed for me. I leaned down to look for him and it wasn't there. Both of my cats were in the other room. I thought I was losing it until one of my cats came into my room and acknowledged that something was under my bed that I couldn't see. Like he was staring at the bird from the window or something, but I couldn't see it. I'm convinced that Ghost Roomie manifested himself and appeared before me. Last week, when I was walking through a doorway in my apartment, my vision went completely black for a split second. I saw images of a figure approaching me and my body felt like it was being wrapped by a giant spider. It was at that point that I felt like my ghost roomie was malevolent and I consulted my witch Twitter mutual for help. They told me to sage the entire apartment and to tell him to leave. I did that and things went back to normal. Last night, one of the bathroom decor fell and the kitchen lights began flickering at midnight. They did some big flickers as if my ghost roomie was telling me that he is still here. Sent a chill down my spine and startled me, but the cats seem unbothered. He hasn't attacked my cats or bothered them at all, though they do seem to acknowledge him, so I'm not terribly worried as long as he leaves them alone. After the attack where I blacked out for a split second though, that was my big concern, and I know he's strong enough to tamper with objects and electricity. I keep trying to get him to leave and he won't. If anyone has any advice on what to do, I'd appreciate it. When I was 13, my mom and I moved from out suburban city outside of Dallas to her hometown near Waco, Texas. Very soon after we got there, she and I both got involved in the local community theater. She acted and directed, and I did crew work until I eventually took up acting myself. The main theater was actually a corrugated steel addition to a much older brick building. The older building was once a college but now served as a general arts center. The building has a reputation of being haunted. Performers and crew members had all experienced something. Lights getting shut off, whispers behind them, shadow people, etc. My first experience when I was 13. My mom was practicing on stage as we did most weeknights, and I was in the green room. The green room is served as a sort of lounge for people who weren't on stage or needed immediately backstage. I was there doing homework. Suddenly I could hear children laughing. This wouldn't be too surprising. The couch I was seated on was directly against the exterior facing the wall. This was a teen building, after all, so it wouldn't be odd to hear children laughing as they played in the empty parking lot of the theater. The laughing persisted, however, and got louder. I decided I would investigate, so I got up and opened the exit door. Immediately the laughter stopped. There were no children outside or anywhere in sight. I was the only child on set that day. I shook off the odd feeling and turned to go back to my homework. As I turned, I saw in the doorway to the backstage corridor the silhouette of a girl. She was maybe 5 or 6, estimated by her height, and wearing what looked like a prairie dress. She then turned and ran to the backstage corridor, laughing the whole way. I waited a moment to make sure I was still alone and grabbed my homework and ran backstage and just hang out there the rest of the night. I must reiterate that I was the only child on set that day. The play took place in modern times and did not call for any cast to be wearing prairie dresses. My mom and I were and still are pretty open when it comes to stuff like that. So I told her in the company of another friend and actor. My mom's friend perked up immediately and said that she had seen the girl multiple times and that it was rumored to be the daughter of one of the college presidents who fell off the roof of the building and died. She said that the girl was a prankster, that she would turn off the lights in the room you were in or move your things to another part of the room when you weren't looking. However, she only did these things when you were alone. She said that she was once on top of some scaffolding, painting a set of facade, when the light suddenly turned off and she could hear the girl giggle immediately after the room fell silent. She had to, in darkness, navigate the scaffolding, carefully climb down the ladder, and go all the way across the theater to turn the lights back on. There are 3 main parts of this story. The first part is what happened to me about 12 years ago, when I was 15 or so. I started getting plagued by intense encounters. I was used to creepy happenings in life. I've had intense sleep paralysis multiple times at night since I was 5 years old. But around when I was 15, they started getting more intense and more sinister. I saw about a half-dozen specific creatures or entities regularly, but it mostly was still just sleep paralysis, although very intense sleep paralysis 3 to 5 times a night. This continued for about a year. That's when the sleep paralysis and general encounters really got more intense and frequent. There were too many encounters to count, even driving a friend that lived with my family to move out because she was convinced the place was haunted. I personally got to a point where I refused to sleep in total darkness, not turning my lights off for months and always having noise on the TV or radio because of what I would hear in the silence. This is about one specific encounter though. For months, I would wake up and see what I can only describe as a black mist in the top right corner of my room. It was maybe 3 feet in diameter and mostly looked like smoke or mist. But when I looked closer, it looked more like something was hiding inside it. Something curled up, completely black and with red eyes. Often, I saw it in sleep paralysis but sometimes completely awake. I never told my family about this. That detail is important. The second part of this story. A few years after this happened, after I moved away from that house and continuously moved every year to new states, I was with my mom talking about all sorts of random things. We got on the topic of psychics and she mentioned that one time when she was younger, she went to a party and was introduced to a woman who claimed to be a psychic. Her friend introduced them and according to my mom, this psychic went wide-eyed when she shook my mom's hand and absolutely freaked out. She wasn't yelling or anything, but you could see the panic in her eyes. She looked at my mom's friend and told her she had to leave the party. She wouldn't stay in the house with this woman. She then looked at my mom and told her, "You have something following you. There's a black cloud above your head." And then she left the party. My mom never thought much of it, wrote it off as a rude woman at the party who was crazy or on drugs. Part 3. Fast forward few more years. I'm 24. My mom still lives in the same house and has a new daughter as well. My little sister is about 3. My little sister's bedroom is my old bedroom. I'm talking to my mom and one of her friends and my mom casually goes, "Hey Annan, didn't you used to have lots of nightmares when you lived here?" "Yeah, to say the least." "Strange thing, I think your sister is having them too." "What do you mean?" "Well, she keeps telling me about the black rain cloud in her room that talks to her at night." I absolutely fucking froze and felt sheer panic. Remember, I never told my family the details of what I saw. I looked at my mom and hardly choked out the question. Did she say where the cloud is?" "Yeah, actually, it's always in the top right corner of the room, by the door." I almost started crying and immediately told my mom all the details of what I saw. Her friend was terrified as well. I told my mom if she is even the slightest bit a believer in the paranormal, she needed to move, or at the very least, get my sister out of that room. I still see monsters every night, but nothing is talking to my little sister anymore. At least, not since they moved. Thank you for finishing my video. I cannot thank you enough in doing it, and I hope you like the stories. By the way, you can follow me on Facebook. Just search for Story Stalker, and also in Twitter, just look for @stalker_story. If you want to be updated with the newest release in the channel, please don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share. Remember, storytelling is the oldest form of education.